Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grey Market Blast, where the amazing Angie Setzer will be giving a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, and market moving news in agricultural markets. Before I start, legals out the way. Nothing discussed in this space of session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Trains PIQ or PIQ Suite, or indeed the hosts, which, as I've already said, is the amazing hostess with the mostess, Angie Setzer. Woo! And myself, myself, Ryan Paisley. Hello, happy, what day is it? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day.
Wednesday. Yeah, it's been given like all week. It's felt like Wednesday. I think yesterday I said that it felt like a Wednesday. And so today I'm like, it's Thursday, right? No, it's not. But happy Wednesday to everyone. Market wise here today, we're obviously it's the same old stuff, different day. One of the things I think I would say though, or one of the things that I think I would point out, that's kind of been a slow roll for me, and I apologize for not kind of catching it right off the get-go, but it feels like a lot of folks are trying to really meet out the details with this particular story. But we'd had talked about the change in shipping fees, right, for the Chinese-owned ships. This was something that the Biden administration had started last March or April. And we had investigated, and then in January, before they left office, his trade representative had kind of rolled out their findings and said, hey, yeah, the Chinese government is participating in unfair practices when it comes to maritime logistics and shipbuilding and all of these other things. We really need to rectify this situation and make things equal or even. And so the Trump administration, had come out and put together a proposal that was released, I think, Friday, that really outlined some pretty steep fees. And so, if you're digging into it, I talked about it yesterday. We talked about it on the call, and I was like, yeah, I was thinking more like container ships and some of these other things. Like, okay, my stuff from Amazon's going to bump up even more than what it has before. But when you really start to dig into it, it will also affect potentially, at least as it's proposed currently, bulk commodity exports. And so I tried to dig in. I took the Massey triggers, or what he did yesterday, and dug into Grok and some of these Chat GPT and some of these other resources just to kind of figure out, see what they had to say when it comes to how much in the way of Chinese built ships move agricultural commodities. Because the fact is, with the proposal as it is now, if you have an ocean freight company that is doing your shipping, is loading your corn, soybeans, wheat, whatever, and the fleet itself, the fleet of this company is more than 50% comprised of Chinese built ships, then the fee is $1 million to enter the U.S. port. And so, quick math, I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I did it yesterday just on a, okay, what would it be on a 60,000 metric ton load of corn, divided by $1 million, if that's what you run into. It's $2.36 a bushel. It's a pretty steep fee.
There's I have just put up in the, I'm never going to not call it the Jumbotron. It's always going to be the Jumbotron to me, but I've just put up a couple of articles that I posted yesterday on exactly this. So definitely worth reading that if anyone's got an interest in it. One from Reuters, which is on our platform, one from SCMP, the Chinese outlet. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely take a look at it, because it is something that we have to watch for. And it is something I hope our commodity groups speak up about, and probably I'm assuming they are, and obviously we don't necessarily want this loophole, but it is very difficult to kind of pin down. And to me, like I said, I apologize for being kind of slow to catch on here, where it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's probably part of what we saw with some of the sell-off late on Friday, was the idea that this really could limit, once enacted, really could limit our competitiveness in the world market that is already going to potentially struggle if we have tariffs, if we have, a decent crop produced out of South America.
It's just reading, just like obviously all these things, everything's liable to change, but how it's kind of constructed at the moment is very convoluted. Like you said, it's, what is it? $1 million on anything on a Chinese built fleet over 50%. It falls to 750,000 if the fleet percentage is between 25 and 50, and it's at 500,000 if the Chinese fleet percentage is less than 25.
And over zero. And then you have that other fee.
But this is the thing as well. There's another proposal that basically said that there's going to be another fee. They'll wait and find out what that fee is, on if the fleet has vessels on order from Chinese shipyards that are due to be delivered in the next 2 years. So who's going to be pricing up all of this? It's like, oh God.
And you're talking $1.5 million, $2 million a boat. And so I just did $1 million on a 60,000. Now, of course, the 60,000 tons, the lower end, and you're not talking $2.36 a bushel on everything, but it is problematic, and it could be something that we have to pay really close attention to. When you look at it, Cargill, ocean transport tends to handle a lot of commodity trade. Obviously, you have a couple other companies that are one's out of Greece, and I think one's out of I think they might be, or one's out of Japan. Either way, there are a handful of them that you can work through, but obviously their costs are going to go up too if you're limiting the supply availability of what can work in. So that is one thing that we really have to pay attention to, that in addition to the tariff talk that we have, the resurgence of the ideas that we could see Mexico and Canada end up with some 25% border tariffs. This fee structure situation, it's more than just escalating the trade war with China, as I had said earlier in the week, where that was kind of what it looked like. This is something that could materially impact our ability to compete as a world exporter going forward, and needs to be rectified. So I mentioned too, we've got Mexico Security Secretary, and just reading off a PIQ sweet tweet here that I just retweeted about meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State in Washington here on Thursday. We've got Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico's president. She is very much saying that she is optimistic that they'll be able to put together a deal with the Trump administration, and she's actively sending folks in. When asked if they'd be willing to tariff some Chinese imports, they're like, sure. Really, I think it's like 2% of Mexico's imports come from China, so it's really not a large amount. And so we have that one relationship that's working, because remember, these are put on individually. So Mexico may be able to work their way around it, and Canada might be like, yeah, suck it. Like at this point in time, the other thing that we're looking at with Canada that is really kind of hindering, or could kind of hinder their negotiation as we move forward, is he introduced copper as a potential tariff again. And so like poor Canada is up there like, okay, I'm one of your largest suppliers of aluminum and steel, one of your largest suppliers of lumber, one of your largest suppliers of this, that, and the other thing. And you just kind of keep stacking these potential tariffs on top of one another. Obviously, most folks see it as a negotiation tactic or whatever, but I feel like the Canada situation is probably going to go to the deadline, if not beyond, potentially. And so that's something that'll be big to watch, too, when it comes to new crop production, because we import a lot of our fertilizer needs out of Canada. And if if a farmer hadn't made those purchases, if an input supplier hadn't made those purchases and they need to tap in, it's going to get kind of expensive for them potentially as we move ahead. And then part 3, we're almost 10 minutes in, but or bullet point 3, anyway, chapter 3, whatever you want to call it. South American weather. Everyone kind of continues to believe, all right, South American weather has completely stabilized, all is well. Let's go ahead and ignore it. Our friend Nico had pointed this out yesterday. Like, be careful with that assumption. We did see Argentina for a minute get cheaper than U.S. corn. U.S. corn has been the cheapest available supply really since late last summer. And for a minute last week, we'd seen an increase in farmer selling because of that reduction in the export tax, the beginning of harvest, some of these other things, this rollover in Argentina futures values, where Argentina got cheaper into some Asian destinations. It's also part of why you saw corn back off a little bit. We got up there, we got into a level where we were starting to hurt our competitiveness. And, that's one of those things where you see the market back off a touch. That's changed this week. Argentina prices have went back up. They're dealing with some pretty heavy rain. Right now we're far away from saying it's problematic, but it is something to pay attention to. As we look at Argentina getting prepared to do some harvesting of their earlier crops, and they're looking at kind of moving from too much or too little rain to too much. There's still a lot of heat in southern Brazil and things that we're dealing with as well. And so for the most part, we'll just be watching how that market structure works itself out, what we see in cash there. But Brazilian cash prices continue to be on the rise. Argentina prices have strengthened again for corn specifically. And so it will keep the U.S. competitive if we have anyone kind of looking to buy, as long as they don't have to pay $2 a bushel of extra shipping fees because it's a China ship. The other thing that we're really kind of going to pay attention to, though, or that I'm paying attention to, that has been a little depressing on soybeans, but I'm not sure if it's mixed signals or whatnot. Chinese crushers have just basically left the building. They are not buying Brazilian beans. They're not buying U.S. beans. They're waiting for the auctionable supplies, or the auction that everyone had kind of said was a guarantee this week. We thought we'd see China's government auction off 2 million metric ton of government soybeans. We have not seen that at this point. And so I think these crushers are waiting to try to get their hands on these older, cheaper, domestically stored soybeans. And they're just, we're kind of at an impasse. And so I always say that, a market structure is made up of your natural buyers, your natural sellers, and your speculators. Yeah. And so if we have limited, trade going on, which we really do right now overall, like EU is uncertain about what things look like, this, that, and the other thing, we're just kind of stuck. And so here we sit. We'll see what today brings. Should be lots of headlines. I almost said headaches. Freudian.
Maybe.
Right. There are headlines and headaches. Lots of either one of those today, and we'll see where we head. But the market itself did bounce off from solid support. I'll shut up here in a minute. Yesterday in corn and wheat, it did the same in soybeans. We retested the lower end today. We definitely need to close higher on all three to feel confident that support holds or will hold. And so we'll see what today brings.
Awesome. Just before we go, just on South American weather and Nico, he did put out a post just now about coffee, saying that put coffee back on your radar. Trades I cover commodities, but with caffeine. I think that's very true. Apparently, Brazil's largest producing state has quickly shifted to drought setup. So buyers beware. Sorry, sellers beware, but buyers take note.
Right. That's something also to pay attention to for the corn crop going forward. Eric Snodgrass talked about it yesterday in his forecast, which he's getting back with Nutrient. You can find him on YouTube. Thank goodness I had missed him. And he had brought up that in the eastern portions of Brazil, you are seeing some pretty extreme dryness set up right now. That's allowing the monsoonal flow to work over. There's a high pressure system basically, and the monsoonal flow is working over this high pressure into Mato Grosso and working its way down into Argentina. That's part of where you're seeing this heavy rain. He says to pay attention to that high pressure system because there is a risk that it could start to move to the west. If that happens, that would shut down your monsoonal flow early. And that would have a huge impact on what we see happen for safrinha production going forward. So something to watch. Nico said that yesterday. Don't sleep on South America. And I'm kind of going to reiterate it. Though we're going to be a little bored for the next 3 or 4 weeks because there really isn't, the crop is going to be planted. It's going to be growing. It looks halfway decent at this point. It's going to take some time before we get into that critical weather period. So happy Wednesday. Right?
Perfect. Happy Wednesday. Angie, thank you as always for just being the hostess with the mostess. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, especially our regular listeners. We really appreciate you. And what day is it tomorrow? Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow on Thursday.
All day.
Oh, it's going to be Thursday all day. Right. Thank you very much. See you later.